Could you explain what it looks like when a child has an onset of PANS in elementary school, but the onset was missed? Can a child be diagnosed years later as a teenager? My doctor has been dismissive about PANS pandas.
The answer is yes, but it takes a very thorough eval. So, as a consultation person to Sheila's school, we see this a lot where all of a sudden you can find reports that the kindergarten or first grade teacher said, what the heck happened? Your child can no longer color. They can no longer do simple subtraction. You know, at second grade, they can add, subtract, and read, and now they can't do that. The parent will report a sudden change in behavior that they noted, but and then it resolved. Or they had a frequency of bedwetting and then it resolved. They had an onset of OCD and it resolved. But often in school reports, you can see, or the teachers will tell parents something changed with your child. We see it even as young as preschool sometime, where the preschool teacher says something about, something changed. Middle schooler, I have a 24-year-old now who I could trace back to middle school, where she said she was very popular, most athletic in her class, she thought. And all of a sudden she showed up and was mute at school. She couldn't talk. Her anxiety got high. Her schoolwork began to degrade. And eventually she couldn't play a sport because she could no longer hit the ball correctly that she was working with. Her eye-hand coordination just disappeared. And that was middle school. But I met her at 24. So it takes some time. This is part of the work, as to how to really go back and look. Often we sometimes have parents pull medical records and see how many times they called the doctor about a sore throat. I've got tons of reports for parents that they journal it over time. They can collect it and they have strep, no strep, no strep, no strep, no strep. But the sibling has strep, or they had a sore throat, but it was swab negative. Here's a kid who has strep but is not swabbing negative. Multiple ear infections, nasal passage infections, all this respiratory stuff that kind of can chronically hit kids. Kids with severe allergies and asthmas that have not been treated, also important. Eczema, psoriasis, those are all autoimmune. I mean, eczema and psoriasis are inflammatory issues. So if you're having a lot of them, they add up.
Okay, I'm just trying to, I want to just name, Dana and I are not clear if in 4 minutes it's just going to shut off, because it's the webinar is scheduled
We'll
to
say goodbye now and wish everybody well.
Yeah, it may keep going, but I'm just saying, if it shuts down, that's just how we're rolling tonight, I think is what's happening.
Apologies for starting 10 minutes late with my screwy computer.
Oh, no, it's all good. Okay, there's a question about what do you do for mold, which is a big question, and we have a few more. So do you want to try to?
So I generally send you to a person expert because I can't say that I'm at, but basically there's two pieces. There are medications that treat for mold, and there are a lot of supplements and binders that help pull it out of the body. And you generally need both. You also have to review your home. There are some very inexpensive do-it-yourself kits, both where you suck the air in into a little valve, or you set a petri dish out. There's different ones to collect, grow mold yourself. But you also have to remember, where did your child live all their life? Because there's a number of families that live in dry housing, but when they used to live over here for 5 or 7 years when the child was younger, they were in a wet house. If there's a water heater break, if there's a shower dripping and your child's bedroom is below that shower or near that shower. And we found also, where did they spend COVID? Did they spend it in the basement? Did they spend it next to the room that's actually been where the leak was happening? Where are roof leaks? Parents often tell me they know they had a leak, they ripped everything apart, or they just redid it. The kitchen was redone. They had a huge flood in the kitchen, but where did that water go from the kitchen? Did it go down below in the walls? So then the second piece is, once you do a do-it-yourself, or you hire a company to come in and actually measure the air professionally in your house, in your attic, in your vacuum. Sometimes it's in the HVAC system. Air conditioners particularly are notorious for holding mold. And then if it's there, you remediate the house, which is not inexpensive, but necessary if you're going to stay in the house. but also new builds are not guaranteed. As a mother, Patty Fort, bless her heart, she really drug me into mold and said, you have to pay attention to this, Peggy. And she's become an expert. And she reminded me that new builds, if you watch them, they're out there in all the weather. All the rain goes in, all the snow goes in, and then they close it up because that's what on schedule they're doing, and not drying out the wood before they close it up, especially in a winter. So you can have wet wood in a very new house that can become problematic.
Okay, if IVIG and medication regime of antibiotics and anti-inflammatories are working, and then labs show a Bartonella, fish test comes back positive with high levels of mycotoxins, do you recommend changing some of the treatment, or do you stay with what's working?
Well, the problem is the people who are doing IVIG and antibiotics are not the same people that are treating mold and Lyme, generally speaking. So you're often now entering into the world of multiple providers, all giving you something different to do and more supplements and medications to manage, which means your whole counter in the kitchen is filled with these things. And your children can be overwhelmed, as can you be. It's hard work to keep it all straight. It's expensive many times because you have to seek reimbursement for a lot of the services. But you're usually dealing with 2 worlds, 3 worlds sometimes. You're dealing with tick-borne issues and mold, and anybody who's doing IVIG and antibiotics is generally in a major medical center, or somebody like me. I'm not ordering IVIG yet, but you're dealing with more than one person usually. There are some naturopaths that try and do it all if they're allowed to prescribe, but they don't order IVIG. They don't give IVIG. They don't, they're not administering it. So if you've got IVIG and antibiotics, you're probably now entering a different world to treat. Now, this is a chronic illness now. It's not a new onset usually that you're running into.
Okay. All right, let's see. There are only a couple more, so we'll just
see if we can get them in.
Yeah, okay. A parent said that the Somerville Adolescent Psych Inpatient Unit is PANDAS friendly. That's exciting.
Oh, that's news. Somerville, though, which hospital? They could tell us.
I don't know. Yeah, if you can, that'd be great. Our biggest PANS symptom is clothing OCD, needing a certain fabric every day, etc. We've done therapy for over a year, CBT, fear ladders, exposure therapy, and stalled out. What else should we try?
Well, have you been on antibiotics, NSAIDs, and treatment for the infection and the inflammation? That's
kind of what I was thinking too. It's like if it's not getting better, like ERP isn't going to work if there's still inflammation. So you may just need to go digging a little bit.
Yeah. And the child will sit there and say, and then they go home and go, I'm not doing that. Either by action or by words, usually both. They just say, yeah. And then you keep trying. You keep trying. I will say, though, therapy is really good with a therapist on ERP if the parent is becoming more and more in part of the ritual. So a ritual is seeking assurance. So if they ask you the same question, I was taught this by OCD experts. If they're asking the same question over and over again, you've got to know how to say, I've already answered that. 3 strikes. The rule I was taught: 3 strikes and you're out. You say to your child, okay, I'm going to answer that question 3 times. On the 4th time, I'm no longer going to answer it. And then I'll set an alarm clock or something to appease them. That if you want to ask that question again in an hour, I'll answer it 3 more times. But sometimes you can't do that. When your child's going to literally rip their hair out of their scalp if you don't answer their question, you don't bother with this. But parents do need to learn, how do they get themselves out of the shower with the child? How do they get the child out of their bathroom? How do they, when they can't go to the bathroom without their child? How do you break the cycle that your child has now looped you in? You don't realize you are now part of the ritual when you are being in this verbal engagement, or you're helping them get what they want as part of their ritual. Now, I understand when your child's really sick, you cannot avoid that. But there is a point where you and them, especially if your child's trying the therapy, you've got to learn your role. It isn't just the child.
Okay. Okay, let's see. People are asking about how to get the Zoom. I'm not exactly sure how we're going to do that just yet. I know the Dearborn families will definitely get the copy of the webinar link. And I am not sure.
Put it out on.
Yeah, I can put it out on maybe some of the PANS on the PANS pages.
Yeah.
think of that. People can definitely email me at Dearborn. You can, and I can see if we're going to share it out largely, then I can share it with people, but I can try to put chat. Okay, but one last one. My child has many of the symptoms you described, but not a sudden or acute onset, more like over months, and especially ADHD, which was diagnosed years ago, but is much worse. Can this still be PANS?
Yes.
Yes.
So many times, because the infection was not known, it may have been a strep infection and you don't know it was there. Many people have mycoplasma pneumonia. It's called walking pneumonia because you walk around with it and then it kind of goes away finally, but you might have had it. We see a lot of kids who had periods of time they were really tired and fatigued, and they had positive for Epstein-Barr. You didn't know they had mononucleosis, but in fact they did. So often it's months and months later. So even though this is where the hazard of the NIMH, of Dr. Sweeto's original article, she focused on pandas deliberately, she focused on strep deliberately because she needed to do research, and that was the only way she could do it. And now the AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, is now reinforcing this, which is it has to be a sudden onset, like the next day. Well, that's not realistic when I just told you that the antibodies often don't peak for 4 to 6 weeks. And so the distance between the insult is often months to years away from the process continuing. Also, you often have waxing and waning, and then there's a point it goes, as we say, off the cliff. So there are many kids, when I go into their history, have actually had PANS events. I recognize them by the nature of how you describe them, or a period of time where you had some OCD going on, or a tic that kind of came and went, or a separation anxiety that was just not a typical one. Maybe they had a decline in their academics for a period of time. But often then there's an insult or some physical illness that hits the antibodies so hard, the body and the whole immune system, or the immune system's degraded by mold or tick-borne, and now it's so much more vulnerable. And then you get a whole level of symptoms that becomes debilitating. So I call that off the cliff. And a very interesting story is that I had a parent report to me after their child had strep January, February, March, that in the middle of March, with no one knowing what was happening, the math teacher said to the mother, I don't know, she's just gone off the cliff.
One last one, and then we're going to wrap up. We've tried antibiotic and anti-inflammatory treatment twice. We did not, I'm going to leave out the doctor's name, but we did not get reduced symptoms of the OCD. Currently trying therapy and SSRI with little improvement. How many years does recovery take?
I think you'd first have to start about checking to see there's not Lyme or tick-borne illness, or mold. As I mentioned, the major medical center people. So at major medical center,
the major medical center person, and I would just say if you've only tried like short courses of antibiotics and anti-inflammatories, you may need longer course. But if it's PANS and PANDAS, therapy and SSRIs really won't. They will help. They're the third prong of treatment, right? Sorry.
They won't move the needle to health though. So the recommendation is, so just to recall that Dartmouth, Stanford, Arkansas, Harvard, MGH, they do not recognize or test for chronic tick-borne illnesses or mold. And so many people have had traditional treatments, including IVIG, where the child gets 60% better, but they do not get close to 90% better. And this goes on for years. And it isn't until everybody says, well, that's as much as you're getting, or we can't, why would you keep going if it doesn't help? The parent ends up, and then you have another flare, and then they find somebody to check for Lyme or mold or tick-borne illness, and that's the golden ticket. But by then they're, several years further into the illness, and things are worse. I didn't mention some accompanying things that happen with mold and tick-borne issues called POTS and mast cell syndrome. There's a lot of other illness states and immune disrupted states that one picks up along the way when you have had long-term chronic inflammation.
So if folks want to ask for a copy of this recording, I'm not sure who we're giving, I'm not sure what we're going to do just yet, but you can email me at sgouch@dearbornacademy.org. Okay, Peggy, you are a hero. We always love having you. Thank you very much. I'm gonna
Thank you for
see you
having
in
me.
the morning, I think, which is exciting. So,
Yeah. Okay, good night.
okay. Good night, everyone. Thank you.